third is Suarez. Goodell comes running in. He's under it, makes the catch. Here's the throw to the plate. It's in the air. He is out! Cameron Redpath's on! Oh, man, what a play! Deep to right field. Way up there, and way out! Second down,
And welcome back to the Stupid Money Podcast. Man, this seems kind of bad right now, but nah. Little tongue-in-cheek, Alex said I wouldn't say that in the open, but I said I would. They've been driving us a little crazy the past couple days, but, it's just...
No. Not us. You.
Me. I mean, yeah, I'll be honest with you. It started Friday because I was out at the bar just trying to enjoy myself. Alvarado, punches out the first two guys, and then freaking Jacob Stallings, middle, like, what are we doing? Just drove me nuts. And then Saturday was awesome. And then Sunday was kind of like one of those games where, I don't know, like they were kind of due for like Ranger to just lose a game, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get too crazy into that. Yesterday was just like, whenever Taiwan Walker starts, I just go into the game annoyed anyway, because I just expect it to go bad. So then when he's his normal self, and then the defense is bad on top of it, and the offense was like, they were okay in that game, 4 runs, but they weren't like also great. Like, it just drove me nuts yesterday. Like, because I just get in a bad mood just from when I see he's starting, and it drives me nuts. But overall, I mean, like, they're still at 38-17, very much in first place in the NL East. We're gonna get into that because the Braves got some more really bad news over the weekend. So there's a lot going on there. But since last time we spoke, this team's still been doing very well. Had a really nice homestand right before this kind of crappy road trip where they swept both the Nationals and the Rangers pretty impressively. The offense was hot. But what is kind of the main takeaway right now? Because there's actually a lot of guys not hitting. If you look at averages a week ago compared to today, which is Tuesday, we're recording right before Zach Wheeler is about to take on the Giants. Looks like it's going to be a bullpen game for the Giants featuring 2 former Phillies prospects in Eric Miller and Spencer Howard. So that's kind of an interesting storyline. But like, Stott's dropped significantly in the last week. Marsh has kind of been hit or miss. Bohm has gone down the last week. I mean, I don't know. Harper's actually kind of gone down in batting average over the last week, but then like Sosa's been red hot, and Schwarber has actually been hitting a lot of singles, which is funny. But then Castellanos has been really bad. So what's your takeaway kind of offensively? Because to me, outside of Walker, the pitching has been what it's been, so it's not much of a change there.
Yeah, offensively, I think rewind a few weeks, and we were talking about how they were going to go about replacing Turner, because for the first 2 months, not 2 months, month and a half, we kind of got the Turner that we expected we were going to get. The power's not fully there, but he was hitting for average, he was stealing bases, he was doing all the things that normal Trey Turner does, and then he got the hamstring injury, and it's like, well, how are we going to kind of replace that righty void in the 2 spot at shortstop? And it's kind of been 2 guys. JT's been really good since he moved into the 2 spot. I think he's on a 17-game hit streak, which is tying the franchise record for catchers, which is pretty sweet. And it's been like timely, but at the same time, it seems like it's almost been like more power. A lot of doubles. The home runs have come, I think more than we expect, at least more than the pace that he was on last year. And then shortstop, Sosa's been incredible. I know one of my biggest worries when Turner got hurt was them having to play Sosa every day, just because we kind of saw last year when he had to play extended periods of time, or 3 games in a week, he kind of stunk, towards the back half of that second game or the third game, just because he's not really an everyday player. He's been kind of like he texted today. He's been a platoon player or a bench player, utility guy for the first 5 years of his career for a reason. But having the chance to play every day he's been really good against righties and lefties. It's not like he's just kind of being that, lefty bat that they expected him to be as a righty. Timely hits and everything, and it's been really cool to see the bottom of the order kind of pick it up. As you talked about the guys at the top kind of slowing down a little bit. The last week or so, it's been a little bit more noticeable, but overall, and with Turner being out, it really hasn't been, that it hasn't looked like the offense has skipped a beat that much. I think one of the games this week that I think it was the big game in Colorado, the bottom three in the lineup went like 7 for 9 or something.
Yes.
So yeah,
Sosa had 3 hits.
They've been piecing it together well. They've been trying to navigate Turner's injury and some of the bigger names in the lineup cooling off, which is the sign of a good team. It, like you and I thought, it hasn't been Merrifield like we kind of expected it to be. He's been, pretty atrocious. But they're getting depth elsewhere. Cody Clemens had a really good few weeks, so other guys are stepping up while some of the bigger names are down, which has been really good to see.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this either before the season started, very early in the season, where I was actually, it's first time in probably since like 2011, where I actually felt comfortable in the depth that they lost a position player. Like they still have David Dahl, who's hitting like 330, and Jordan Lupo, I think that's how you say his last name, down in the minors, with guys like Scott Kingery and Derek Hall, who we know can at least be serviceable here. And Rafael Marchand just came back to AAA at catcher. So it's actually the first time in a while, like I felt really good about the depth. And I mean, Cody Clemens carried them in that national series. Single-handedly won the game on Saturday, and then came back Sunday and had a monster game in a blowout. So, he's did it a little bit too. And I was getting on Garrett Stubbs a lot, but he played pretty well on Saturday in Colorado. So, good for him. He needed that. They needed that. I just think, like, obviously backup catcher's not at the top of the pecking order in terms of things they need to upgrade, but it was getting the point where he was almost an automatic out in the defense. He was struggling defensively, honestly. There was a lot of pass balls in that one game. And,
it's been like that for, I don't know what's going on there, but JT's had a lot of pass balls this year too. I don't know what's going on with the catchers, but it's, it's funny because when the JT knee injury thing was going on, you text us and it's like it might be time to make this trade, and it was Stallings who ended up
I know
sending you into a frenzy this weekend. But
yeah, I mean he's a backup catcher with high offensive numbers on a bad team. He's going to get traded at the deadline. I mean that's a given. But yeah, I think that would be, even if there was an issue with one of them, Realmuto or Stubbs, it might be something they think about. But really the problem is outfield defense, or not just defense, the outfield in general. I mean, we're talking about Castellanos, I think, is a negative 1.2 WAR. Pache might be a 0. I think Merrifield's a -2. Rojas is like a plus 0.2. And Marsh is a plus 1.2, so it comes out to 0. The WAR of the outfield.
Stolness tweeted out today, Marsh has 1.2, Rojas and Pache are both 0.1. Merrifield's negative 0.2, so he cancels Rojas and Pache out, and then Castellanos is negative 1.2, so he cancels Marsh out. And total they're 0, which is 27th in the league.
Yeah, and I don't know what they're going to do. It seems like this is like the 8th straight year. It seems like the guy the Phillies signed to play the utility role has absolutely sucked. It's like Josh Harrison was so bad at it. God, who's the guy a couple of years ago? I mean, technically, I'd say Didi too, like because kind of did be. Yeah, like it seems like every year the guy they get for this infield utility role just absolutely sucks when he has like actually a decent. Back of the baseball card, which is just so weird. But I think it's because you're getting a lot of
this is the best back of the baseball card that they've kind of dipped into with that role. And it's, I mean, aside from Harrison, and I guess Didi contract wise, but aside from Harrison, this is maybe the most unpleasant first 2 months of that utility experience that we've had.
Yeah. It's kind of odd. I don't know if people are saying it's him adjusting to not having an everyday role and his at bats and that, but he's taking it into the field now too. So
yeah.
But the point I was trying to get at is, like, deadline, it feels like they have to do something with the outfield. Castellanos plays every day, and between the money they have invested in him and the fact I think he actually means a lot to that clubhouse, like Rojas really likes him. I know he was the one that kind of talked to Bohm after the I hate this place thing. It was kind of him who told him, like, hey, you got to hit this head on. And we know, that had a positive impact. Like, they're not getting rid of Castellanos. No matter how bad it looks with the 200 average and him flaring at everything, like, it's not competitive at bats. He's not going anywhere. Marsh, they've kind of made him a platoon at this point. Like, he just cannot hit lefty still. I don't know what they're going to do, but I guess, like, Rojas and Pache is going to stay the center field thing. I mean, what's more likely do you think that happens? We get like a Rojas Marsh platoon in center, and they go get a certified right-handed left fielder, or they keep Rojas every day in center, and we have a platoon with Marsh and a platoon, like a Tommy Pham type in left field.
I mean, this is, months in advance, but with the way that their division kind of is, I don't know what we'd have to give up prospect wise to make it work, but Pache and Rojas, their skill set's kind of repetitive.
Yes.
Just looking at it, they have the same exact WAR. Rojas has been, like, for all the talk that we made in the offseason about how good the defense was and how good the numbers were last year, it's been, like, very bad, like -5 or -6 defensive run saves.
He's dropping easy balls. Like,
yeah. So, I'd ask this team whatever one they like more out of Rojas and Pache. I'd try and throw Walker in there just to kind of offset. I don't know if it would work. You'll see where I'm going with it. Why I'd get rid of Walker, but I'd call the Rays about an Eflin, a Rosarena package and see what you'd have to throw in prospect wise to get them to take on the Walker contract and kind of swap a starter and, it might cost you Crawford if you're throwing in that type of contract in there, which I don't know if I'd be in love with because Crawford's having a pretty good year. And if you're trading a Rojas or a Pache, I know he's another lefty, but that means you're confident in what Crawford's future looks like with the organization, I think. But I mean, if you're talking about a number 3 or number 4 starter in the playoffs that you can confidently trust and getting that righty outfield bat, you kind of hinted at what's going on with the Braves this year. The Dodgers pitching isn't great. Like, if you genuinely think that this is your year to win the National League and go back to the World Series with everything that's going on, that's a move that you might have to be willing to make, giving up one of your top 5 prospects to get Walker off the books and get kind of 2 birds with 1 stone in that kind of trade deal.
Yeah, and look, I was going to get into this, but you kind of segued into it. But I think it's past the point of being opposed to trading McAble. It's just not really happening in AAA right now. And a team like the Rays, I think, would actually be really interested in him because there's no health concerns. He still has a live arm. It's a lot of walks. He's 22. He'll be 23 in August, I think.
Yeah.
So I think they're a team who could see him as a nice project because we know how they are with pitching. They seem to turn these guys around. I think they'd be very interested in him. Whereas around MLB, I think his value has diminished since 2 years ago. He's just not really improved numbers wise. Yes, he stayed healthy and he's not that old, but just really hasn't gotten. I never looked at him as an ace, but I think like a number 3 was a pretty good expectation for him. And right now, it's not even looking like it's going to get there. I mean, his ERA is almost 7 in AAA, and I think his WHIP is 2, if not higher. So it's ugly. I would not be opposed to moving him. I don't want to move Starling Caba, but there's a couple guys in the system that, like we said, Pache and Rojas are repetitive. Then Rincon is a little competitive to Caba, and Stott and Turner are not going anywhere anytime soon. And Aiden Miller is still technically playing shortstop, while Alec Bohm might be playing himself into an extension. So parting with some of these infield prospects, I think sans Caba, because I think he has the highest ceiling. I think this is
okay. I'm gonna say Miller's not getting traded.
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying my 3 that I definitely would not trade: Painter, Miller, Caba, and I'll put Taiit in there.
I'd go probably Miller, Caba, and Taiit, just because we've seen the last few years how the Phillies kind of do with pitching.
Yeah.
Painter kind of jumped. Abel jumped at the start. Ben Brown came out of nowhere. Clausen's been ridiculous this year. Kerkering jumped 6 levels last year. Now he's one of the 3 righties that we trust in our bullpen. I think that the way that Barber and Mattingly have kind of been working the farm system, and with how Caleb Cotham is kind of with his philosophy and them working it down from the majors to the minors, I trust their ability to get pitching. So I'm not putting Painter in, any possible trade package. And I know teams will probably be a little bit more hesitant now with him having not pitched in a year and a half with the arm surgery. But at this point in time, I don't think I'd be again, alluding to everything that's going on in the National League this year, I don't think I'd rule Painter untouchable. I'd be more kind of leaning towards keeping the bats in the farm system, just because aside from Stott and Bohm this year, we've kind of seen how difficult it's been for our kind of organization to develop prospects offensively. So I'd rather keep as many darts possible to throw at the dartboard and try and hit on as many of those as I can instead of trading. Or if you want to do vice versa and sell them while their value's highest, I get that too. But I think the talent with Miller is way too high, and you don't have any catching prospects besides Taiit, and he's 18?
I don't even think he's 18. Yeah, I think he's still 17.
So, and that's another thing. I don't think it's worth selling him now, because we see what Ethan Salas has done at 18 years old, jumping to a top 10 prospect. Young catchers are a luxury to have, so it's not worth selling him now while he's kind of in the midst of his best professional season. If you're going to sell him, maybe wait a year or two until he's a potential top 50 prospect. I mean, Salas jumped from unranked to top 10 in a year and a half. So with catchers, it seems to be less of, a luxury. So it's harder to find.
Yeah, I don't really want to move him, but I do think that actually is the perfect trade package for them. And I mean, I guess I'll just say it, Ronald Acuna, ACL tear out for the year, so now they don't have Strider and Acuna for the season. We're going to get into expectations in the NL East now after this, but let's just see what they do, because Randy could be a guy they go after. Because I really don't think they're not going to punt on this season. Obviously,
No,
I think it's very hard for them to think about winning the World Series without their best position player and their best pitcher. But crazier things have happened. They won the World Series without Acuna before. I think the NL was a little weaker that year. The Dodgers obviously were not the super team they are now because they did not have Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani on that team. And the Phillies as we know, ran out of gas at the end of that year, and the Central was the Central. That's not really the case this year, whereas the Dodgers are, I don't know. Is Kershaw on that team? How many Hall of Famers are on that team? 5, 6? And
Yeah,
obviously
at
we know the Phillies have the best record right now. So I think it's a little
Central's
different
not bad.
situation.
Central's not even bad.
Yeah,
Cubs and Brewers are decent.
The Brewers, I'm surprised by how good they look without Corbin Burns and Devin Williams, honestly.
Steele hasn't been good this year, but I wouldn't want to see in a 3 or 5 game series. I wouldn't want Imanaga, Steele, and whoever else they have. Javier Assad's been really good. I would not want to see the Cubs.
Yeah, this is the year that I really want to avoid the wild card series because I think there's some not so great overall teams that in a short series have the pitching to give you issues, but that's getting way down the line. But yeah, Randy and Eflin would be a good one. I'm just trying to think. There's not a lot of other teams right now where you point. I mean, like Brent Rooker on the A's, maybe. I don't know what's going to go on there. Everyone keeps saying Kyle Tucker. I don't think the Astros. They're kind of climbing back into that because the West is so bad.
They just picked up like 4 or 5 games in the West in like the last week. They're like tied for second in the West. They're not trading Kyle Tucker.
Yeah, so that's kind of done. I know they got off to such a bad start, and all like the pundits on YouTube and social media started putting out all those crazy Astros players trade packages because Bregman is up at the year and Tucker's up after next year and all this stuff. But I don't think that's going to happen at this point. And then there's like teams that aren't good right now that are struggling a little bit, but also aren't going to sell you anything. Like the Reds and the Pirates are still looking towards the future. They're not going to give you anything. The White Sox, I mean, Luis Robert would cost so much, and there's really nothing else on that team to even bother with. So
yeah, I mean, not in terms of like outfield. I mean, Tommy Pham and like
Kopech,
Eric Fetty's interesting. But he has another year of team control, so he'd probably cost more than you'd like to give up for Eric Fetty. But
yeah, I could see this. I could see the Phillies doing a Kopech Pham package. Honestly, I think if they try to go cheap, which you just brought this up, and it's kind of something I said in the offseason where I don't want to say they punted on the deadline the last 2 years, but they were ultra conservative. I think maybe sans the Ohape thing, but Marsh and Ohape at the time had like equal value, and it was just it was just changing from a position where you had surplus to one where you didn't. So like to me, that wasn't even really like parting, like going big. It was just kind of an even trade-off in a sense. I think between the Braves injuries and the Dodgers, both their pitching and the back half of their lineup is not very good. It was something I kind of brought up in the preseason where, it's like 3 Hall of Famers, and then you got a couple quality players in Will Smith and Hernandez. But then after that, it does go downhill. And in the playoffs, kind of how you make, be successful is you work around the really good players and you get to the crappy ones and get them out. And, that's kind of a recipe I think teams would take against the Dodgers in the playoffs. So I do think Nebraska.
Looking at, I mean, obviously the World Series in Boston, he was very good, but Mookie has not been good in the playoffs for the Dodgers. I don't know what's happened the last few years, but like last year against Arizona in that series, they got upset. He was either 1 for the series or 0 for with a lot of strikeouts. Like they are, everyone makes the jokes of since they won the World Series during the COVID year, it was Mickey Mouse, but like they do not have a good track record in the postseason. Lately, the last decade, really. They lost to the Padres. They lost to the Diamondbacks, 2 wild card teams that, they steamrolled in the regular season. Like last year, they finished maybe 15 games better than Arizona, and they got manhandled in the playoffs by them. Which we've seen Arizona or Atlanta's kind of done the same thing with us, and they got beat pretty handedly 2 years in a row. So like we know firsthand that it's possible, but the Dodgers definitely don't have that postseason track record that their roster would kind of indicate.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Otani's never played in the playoffs. Yamamoto's never pitched in the playoffs. And a lot of those guys in that rotation currently are young players or kind of guys that, like Walker Buehler coming off injury. And one of their guys just got hurt, I think, again. But, like those guys they were relying on, like Bobby Miller and Stone and them, like they don't have much playoff experience. So I do think.
I don't know. Do you have any idea how long the Japanese season is in comparison to like the 162 games that the MLB is? Yeah, I just know I'm thinking as far as, Yamamoto, he's how old, 24, 25?
Yeah, 25.
He's got a lot of mileage on the arm for such a young age just because of the way that Japan kind of does things. Looking at a different example, like Roki's 20 and he's already, thrown a fair amount over there in Japan. He's been kind of a known commodity for 2 years. So they don't really have the whole college thing. So once guys are done with, whatever schooling, they kind of just jump right to the majors, I think, if they're that good.
Right.
And I just remember it being a talking point, or at least something that I noticed when he was going through the free agent process or going into it. Yamamoto's last start in Japan, he threw like 170 pitches. So like I don't know if that was, a one-off because he was never going to pitch for
them again,
that Japanese club again. And they were just like, we don't really care what you do. Go win the game for us and have fun in America. But I never looked into it if it was a one-off or if that was kind of how they just treated him as their horse and, 150 pitches a game. But that's, not built to last, obviously, in Major League. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where he's at in August, whether he's, fully healthy or if they kind of look to limit his innings and save for the playoffs, or if he kind of hits that dead arm period where, all of a sudden the fastball is 93, 94 instead of the 95, 96, 97 that it's been to start the season. And he's already getting hit around a little bit, whether he's tipping pitches or if the fastball's flat. But if it drops, a mile or two down, it could be, even weaker of a rotation than they already have.
Yeah, so I looked it up. They play 143 over there.
Okay, so pretty similar.
Yeah, it's not too crazy.
Maybe like 2 or 3 less starts.
Yeah. So, I mean, but still, like, they still have playoffs too. So,
yeah,
it still is a deeper season, obviously. And there's only 12 teams in the Japanese league, so I don't think the playoffs are as extended. Whereas, this is, now what, six teams on a side. So, there's 4 rounds to get, 4 rounds to win the World Series. So, a lot different there. But kind of going past all that now, the Phillies 6-game lead over the Braves. The Braves do not have Strider and Acuna the rest of the season. I think Charlie Morton just got hurt too. I don't know how significant that is.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have to win the division at this point, right? Like they have to. Like I think a 6-game lead with the team that's gonna chase you without its best position, the MVP of the league last year, the guy who probably could have won the Cy Young last year with his 20 wins. I know his ERA was a little high, but his strikeout numbers were insane. Like I know, like, even when they got out to lead early, I mentioned this with the Strider injury, like, do they have to win it now? Now with Acuna, I feel like it's a definite yes that if the Phillies blow this division, it's not a good look.
I think Arcia just broke his hand too.
I don't know, because I think I saw him in a lineup the next day after that was mentioned.
Maybe he did. I know Riley just got back for them, so it's so tough for me to say that, the Phillies definitely have to win the division because, while our offense hasn't been great, we've played the weakest part of our schedule this season.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the schedule goes, everyone's kind of complaining about the schedule. 1, everyone plays the same teams. 2, Major League Baseball is just not that good. Like, there just aren't a lot of good teams. Like, everyone's like, the Phillies are playing awful teams. They're not that good. It's like they have a top 3 payroll in baseball. They have 2-time MVP. They have guys who are top 5 in the MVP every year. Like, they are that good. They have guys who are top 3 in the Cy Young before. Like, yeah, they're not going to win at a 70% clip the rest of the season. But, like, the roster's really good. The team's really good. The entire roster from top to bottom has guys who can consistently do it. So, like, yeah, 70% is probably not attainable, but there's no reason that they can't win 100 games. So the schedule talk was kind of driving me a little bit crazy. But as far as that, the Braves have been worse offensively in terms of, like, Riley's been awful. I think through the month of May, I saw a tweet like Ozuna was their only guy with above league average OPS plus. Maybe like a couple guys were right over 100, but it wasn't many. And Riley was hurt for the majority of the month. Acuna is now down, so, like, they've been really bad, and they're only 6 games back. So, like, we saw what their offense looked like last year. They're going to hit their stride at some point. They're going to play these weaker teams like we've been getting at the start of the season. The Braves are going to get them at some point. So, like, with a 6-game cushion and the Braves missing Strider and Acuna, like, yeah, the Phillies should win the division, but I'm not going to sit here and say, like, if they don't, it's a failed season. Now, if we kind of, coast and win 90, 91 games and play like 500 or sub 500 the rest of the season, like, I'll be a little bit annoyed because that just means that something went wrong and we got complacent in that category, because I think our kind of thing with 500 teams, just playing 500 teams, keeps getting pushed back. Like, now we might not see them until like the middle of June, something like that. So, like, we keep saying that the schedule is going to break, kind of going against my last point. We keep saying the schedule is going to break, but it doesn't seem to break. Like, that break keeps getting pushed back. So, like, we're at the point now, if we play 500 the rest of the year, we win like 92 or 91, something like that. We should be more around the 95, 96 range, which will probably keep the division within 5 games one way or another. So, like, I'm not at the point where I'm ready to say they have to win it, but they definitely should, because things are really breaking their way.
Yeah, I think they should. Like I mentioned earlier, I think this is the year I just want to avoid the wild card series, get to throw Zach Wheeler in game 1 of a series, and then, I know he would have been good to go game 5 the last couple of years if necessary. But just to know I'm definitely getting 2 Zach Wheeler starts in a 5-game series, I feel a lot better about. And then knowing I kind of have like some kind of Nola Suarez combo in game 5, I just feel way better about that situation. So I would like to avoid the wild card series if possible this year, and they do have the opportunity to do it considering the Braves injuries and the lead they currently have in the division. Last thing, Trey Turner sounded like he was way ahead of schedule, and then kind of like relapsed over the weekend where they had him up to running at full speed and the hamstring got sore again. And after seeing what Lamont Wade did on the Giants yesterday, where he kind of rushed back from a hamstring injury and then like totally destroyed it on a slide yesterday, I'm kind of good with letting the Sosa Clemens thing play out for a couple more weeks. I really like Trey Turner in October versus June. I think, I know they're not really hitting right now in some positions, but the positions that Trey Turner plays, they are hitting at. So it's hard for me to get there. And I know people have brought up the outfield with Trey Turner. Like, Sosa and Clemens are just not going to play every day. The Phillies will eventually get exposed. I think if that happens, I do think eventually Turner may become an outfielder, but I mean, that's a conversation for like Aiden Miller soaring through the minors and Bowman not still being here type thing. Like, that's so far down the road. But for the meantime, I don't think Turner is going to change positions outside the infield. Maybe second base. I don't know, but I don't see him leaving the infield this season.
Yeah, as far as moving him to the outfield, I kind of just look around the league, and Byron Buxton just can't stay healthy. And, a lot of other fast center fielders or, outfielders in general just don't have the longevity because they're spending so much energy and time running around gaps, trying to chase balls down, throwing their arms out.
Yeah,
And
and there's a
you
lot
know,
of
when
walls
you
too, like what
yeah,
happened with Judge last year.
yeah, when you have, that guy for 10, 12 years
Yeah.
at $300 million at that price, I'd rather keep him out of the infield, especially when, or keep him out of the outfield. Last year, the biggest, question, especially when you're struggling, was, well, if this guy's best tools is speed, why would we sign him to this contract? Because speed's the thing that goes first for these guys. Well, then try and preserve the legs, try and preserve the body by having him not jump into walls, and
Yeah.
not to say shortstop's not a stressful position, but try and keep the stress off of the legs, the body as much as possible, and let him. I mean, let's be honest. We got Trey Turner for offense, not so much the defense side. So preserve the body and let him focus on offense as much as possible, and
Yeah.
kind of not to say that we're already looking at the end of Trey Turner's career, because we're 7-8 years away from hopefully the major decline. But let's be a little bit long-sighted here and preserve our 1B franchise player as much as possible. As far as timetable, kind of going off of preserving him, I think I need more information on what like the setback is, but I'm
Right.
kind of with you. Don't rush him back. But like Thompson telling me he's not concerned. Thompson also told me that he liked the way that Taiwan Walker threw yesterday. So like it's just coach talk. I don't think long term I'm concerned, but something that I'm just really confused about is like, what do they do in these things? Because it was like Trey Turner's not going to run the bases as scheduled in San Francisco. It's like, well, what was he doing? Like, I don't understand how like one of the big. I know he was doing sprints and like normal infield work and stuff, but like the big benchmark is like he's going to run the bases now. It's like, yeah, I get it. It's full speed running the bases. It's a thing, but it's just so funny to me. It's like, yep, Trey Turner's not going to run the bases as scheduled. Like everyone gathering around with their stopwatches to make sure the guy who went 40 stolen bases in a row without being caught can, still run sub 11 from home to home.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what I saw when they showed some video. It was like a lot of curved cone work that looked like when you round bases.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think maybe straight line stuff isn't as much of a concern with when he's turning and sliding and that kind of stuff. So that's probably what that meant by run the bases in terms of full speed, then turning, and then maybe they had him sliding in a third or something. So it's probably of that nature. But yeah, I mean, I kind of, when I originally heard the 6 weeks, I kind of pinpointed that weekend series against the D-backs in the end of June, like June 20th to the 23rd or something like that it is. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, get him back for the London series. I don't see that happening now. But if you can get him back maybe for that home stand towards the end of June, if it's not that bad, I mean, that's still almost a month away. That's 24 days from today. So I still think that might be in the books, but I don't see him playing in London next weekend, obviously. So yeah, but it's still not that bad, which sounds good. And as long as
and
these
I think
guys.
Another thing for me is I know, we've kind of seen the last year and a half that he's very volatile, but like there's no need to rush him back when Sosa's going this good. Like we talked about how we're kind of worried that he can get, exposed at any minute. And I really think that the way that he kind of gets in swing mode sometimes and chases pitches and swings out of his shoes, like it really can happen at the snap of fingers that Sosa one day can magically just go like 0 for 4, and this kind of joyride that he's been on will just be at an end. But, monitor it, see if there's any signs of the slump coming, and then maybe try and, slowly ramp up Trey's workouts to get him back before that Diamondback series. But like until that, when Sosa's going this good and you're getting continuously good at bats from Stott, and yeah, Bohm's dipped a little bit, but like like you said earlier, the positions that Trey would affect are going pretty good right now, other than Merrifield. But again, he's kind of filling in and left most of the time. So like, there's no need to rush something back, like a hamstring injury, on a guy whose predominant trait is speed, just because you want to have Trey Turner in the lineup.
Yeah, definitely. It would just be nice if Castellanos picked up some more slack there, but that remains to be seen. Real Muta has done a nice job in the 2 spot for him, but
yeah, literally everything every void that Trey has left so far for the first 3.5 weeks have been filled pretty seamlessly between the 2-hole and shortstop. So knock on wood that those guys can keep it up while he's out, and they're still trying to navigate the next few weeks without him.
Yeah. Well, we'll try to come back to you in the next 2 weeks, and hopefully it goes a little better than the last weekend has. But long season, I know. I don't think Rhys Hoskins is going to play in that return series. He also has a hamstring. He has a hamstring injury. He's been out for a couple of weeks now.
Good to know, because I was probably going to buy tickets to go see it.
Yeah, I mean, keep an eye on that. I mean, the thing is, like, he can DH, whereas, like we just talked about, Trey Turner is like a speed player. You know what I mean? Like, that's not Rhys, obviously. So it's a little different. But keep an eye on that. But yeah, he is slated to return in some capacity next week. So we'll come back to you sometimes in the next couple of weeks and talk to you then.